The lights blurred through the patio glass, the cold sugar rose pressed in my palm. The night wasn't over. Neither was I. Thought friendship meant loyalty. Now it tastes of betrayal glazed in pastel icing. The ballroom's glow bled through the service door as I slipped backstage, arms loaded with tools and a heart wobbling on the brink of collapse. Sugar roses wilted in their box. Spatulas clanged like chiding bells. For a moment, I let myself imagine my cake under those chandelier-centered. Stage, laughter, maybe a tear in Emma's eye. Instead, I pictured her polite smile slicing deeper than any knife. The planner appeared. Professional smile, just a shade too tight. She looked almost sorry as she laid the blow clean. Sorry, Maya. We had to switch last minute. Bride's request. Her words didn't tremble, they cut. My breath caught. The air in this little corridor thinned until I felt hollowed out, emptied like a mixing bowl after midnight. This wasn't a small change. It was an erasure, professionally humiliating. At the moment I needed validation most. Part of me wanted to argue, to beg for a taste of dignity. Another part just wanted it to be over before anyone else saw the sting coloring my cheeks. A sugar rose tumbled from my grip, bouncing across the linoleum to settle in a streak of spilled champagne. I stared at it, fragile, stubborn, oddly out of place. I remembered nights with Emma in a dormitory kitchen, me holding her through the jagged sobs after that cruel first date, her head on my shoulder, a secret held tight for both our sakes. We used to swear no mood, no man, no burnt cake would come between us. Tonight, loyalty tasted like acid. Maybe some betrayals ferment slowly, frosting their own centers in secrecy. I ducked into the service corridor, away from the lights and the laughter, breath shallow and mind racing. Hurt and anger danced a dangerous duetrage at the snub, despair at how easily my story was written out. I pressed my palms to the rough brick wall. For a heartbeat I let numbness settle, the party noise muffled, not crying, not thinking, just ... still. My phone burned in my palm, a cold lifeline. I thumbed Nina's contact, business partner, friend, and lately, distant shadow. As soon as she answered, I whispered. Everything fell apart. Emma swapped the cake. I need to know. Why? Was it me? Nina's voice was hushed, busy, but more tired than I remembered. You did nothing wrong. Maybe Emma panicked. Maybe she wanted safe over special. Her words were meant to soothe but left me unsettled, skin prickling with suspicion. There was a pause. A thrum of party beats filtered through the cracked door. I gripped a spatula, knuckles white, staring at the wedding program I named there, but only as footnote, a technicality. For a heartbeat I almost believed the excuses. But something sharper, flicker of survival or spite cut through the fog. No more looking away. I pledged. I'll uncover the truth. Nobody erases me from my own recipe. Slipping back into shadows, I wiped my hands and tried to steady my breath. The champagne, the roses, even the giggles drifting in from the main hall now tasted like secrets. If Emma had locked me out with a dismissal, I'd break in with revelation then. My phone blinked, snapping me out of rumination. Nina's text. Maya, there's a scathing review trending about your tacky cake. You need to see this. My fingers froze, the spatula cold in my hand. Suddenly, the humiliation wasn't just private. It was Virola. Thousands strangers lined up to judge, none of them tasting what I'd built with bruises and flour and hope. The service corridor seemed even darker. Still, as I stared at that sugar rose at my feet, I let every ache settle not as defeat, but as a fuse. I would not go quietly. One scathing one-star review can unbake 100 sleepless hours. By noon, my phone burned with strangers' opinions. Amateur, tacky, ruined the day. Screenshots swirled across feeds. Emma's dismissive word now multiplied hundreds of times, in fonts sharper than knives. Every ping felt like another lump of raw dough caught in my throat. My shoulders bunched as I sat at my bakery's window, heart thudding as if it wanted out. Sunlight fell on flower-speckled glass, making my little studio look innocent, but the internet had infected every corner. Every ding brought another accusation. I scrolled through bile, disbelief, and fake sympathy, thumb numb, hope souring into something I might never sweeten again. It was almost a relief when my phone slipped from my grip, hitting the worn wood floor with a clatter that sounded like something breaking open inside me. I knelt to grab it. The cool linoleum stung my knees. Silence filled my ears. Inside, my chest tightened with the knowledge no one wanted my side. Not today. I cradled the phone, but the doubt pulsed elsewhere, in the brick dust of the oven, the sweat-stiff apron, the storm that had been my hands all week. I could almost hear Dad, standing in this same kitchen, his voice a low hush behind every setback, after every fall, stand taller. Easier for him to say he'd never lived in a world where humiliation went viral. I forced my hands to work, drafting a measured response, a string of careful words meant to defend, maybe sway. Futile. I stared at the draft and watched it turn cold, then swept it away with a bitter flick. No reply could unring this bell or sweep away the flour from my reputation. My laptop hissed as I closed it, clicks echoing off silent walls. I slumped into my chair, legs folding like spent meringue. Morning light moved across my battered counter, the same counter where I'd once celebrated baby steps, first perfect whipped cream, first 5-star catering review, first sugary thank you. Now, none of it seemed to matter against the avalanche of shame. The silence thickened. It pressed in around the spatulas, the cooling rack, the sugar roses I'd salvaged. I let my eyes close for a moment, no tears, no rallying words, just a stillness where everything inside me collapsed to a bruised center. But even in that dark, something inside twisted. Maybe not hope, but something near its stubborn. I opened my eyes to the glint of the old pastry cookbook Emma had given me, spattered and worn. My hands found its pages like a prayer. I straightened. I would not let them tell my story for me. Quiet, I whispered into the air, thick with old desserts. I must reclaim my story. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A shiver through my fingertips. Nina's number. Her message was short. Every word an earthquake. We need to talk about the review. I wrote it. I stared at the screen, numb. Then, a flare of anger and heartbreak lit me up. So it wasn't just Emma, not just a jealous crowd. It was Nina, my business partner, confidant, the rock I'd leaned on, the baker who shared my midnight burns. She'd elbowed me out with a digital dagger. Before I could react, the studio door swung open with a slow, sonorous ground, the kind that makes time stutter. Nina stood there, framed by the morning glare, lips pressed in a line that dared me to rise or bow. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. We need to talk. Her voice was cold, but it was me who stood up straighter. In that moment, the kitchen's old warmth felt gone, replaced by a sharper chill. Betrayal had a flavor, I learned, metallic, unsweetened, but it woke me like nothing else. I let my hand rest on the edge of the pastry table, a symbolic anchor, a promise that I would never lose my recipe to anyone else's greed again. The scent of burnt sugar drifted through an open window as Nina's shadow crossed my light. This wasn't a conversation. It was the start of a battle. Betrayed by my partner, the world tilts. Every crumb I ever baked feels poisoned. The bakery felt suddenly airless, the blue tile cold beneath my feet as Nina's confession buzzed between us, raw as a burn. Her eyes didn't flicker, not even when I broke the silence with a voice I barely recognized. Why sabotage me? The words left a taste more bitter than burnt caramel. Nina shrugged, straightening the collar of her chef coat with practiced indifference. You weren't scaling fast enough. We had potential, Maya, but you played it safe. I want more. Her voice was businesslike, as if she was critiquing a gnarled loaf, not carving up the heart of our work. My pulse raced, shame and disbelief wrestling in the space where trust had lived. All those nights we split a stale cinnamon bun over the dream of storefront glory. The endless batches we ruined, laughing in the flour haze. I saw now that hunger was never about cake, it was for control. You never wanted growth, you wanted ownership, I said, hands trembling as I boxed up the last of the clean spatulas, a useless gesture, but I needed something to hold. The room echoed back, silent and complicit. The bakery's quiet told me to focus, to search for the rot beneath the fondant. Memories of our late-night sugar tastings sharpened. Once her laughter had been the yeast in my ambition. Now that memory cut like a knife. Was Emma involved? I demanded, staring at the row of receipts lined up like gravestones. Nina rolled her eyes. Go dig, you'll find what you need. Then she slipped out, smooth as melted chocolate, leaving me alone with suspicion and spite. That was all. The invitation I needed. My hands shook as I wrenched open Nina's laptop, tension spiking each time the icons spun. Buried among bakery invoices and staff schedules was a chain of emails, subject lines as cold as steel, arrangements, press strategy, confirm guest list, and there, plain as a thumbprint on fondant, were threads between Nina and Emma's wedding planner. The words blurred. Swap if necessary. Image matters more. Double quotes. No risk. Have backup ready. One attachment, a budget for a store-bought cake sourced days before the wedding, stamped with the bakery's name in faded ink. I traced my finger over their digital signatures, the bile rising in my throat. This wasn't carelessness. This was collusion. For a moment, anger competed with devastation. Every memory of trust, our secret handshake when we landed our first catering job, the way Emma saved me a slice of almond tart after her finals meltdown, now seemed orchestrated, another ingredient in a long con. I pressed my palm to the countertop, fighting to keep the room from spinning. Stillness rushed in. I let myself feel it, not the fury, not grief, just the exposed hollow where loyalty had collapsed. I was the only heartbeat in a room built on years of borrowed faith and borrowed funds. The sugar roses on the shelf stared accusingly, but then resolved, surfaced, fiery, sharp, a taste left behind when sweetness is gone. I opened a blank document, fingers tight on the keys. I'll expose every lie, I whispered, coldly certain, eyes burning. If I had to defend my bakery crumb by crumb, secret by secret, then so be it. A new noise sliced the hush. My phone rang, the display glowing Emma's name. The bakery light caught my reflection in Nina's blacked-out screen, circles under my eyes, jaw set. The buzz felt like a starting pistol, not a threat. My thumb hesitated over answer, courage crusting beneath my skin. The battle lines were clear now. Old recipes wouldn't save me. You don't learn true heat until you risk the burn. Sometimes the voice you dread is the only one that can break you open. When I answered Emma's call, I half hoped for anger, for some clean line I could finally cut. Instead, her voice trembled, raw as nerves stripped of sugar. Maya, I thought I was helping. I never imagined. I pressed the phone to my ear palm slick, a storm brewing in my gut. Helping, I cut her off, my own voice sharp. How does standing by while Nina gutted everything we built together count as helping? My anger curled, ugly, protective, but tired. You could have stopped it. You know how hard I fought, how hard we both did for this place. Across the line, I heard quiet sobs, Emma's tears, an old, familiar ache. I was scared, she whispered. She promised it would just be one review. She said you'd adjust. I never wanted to hurt you, Maya. I swear, I thought. If people believed you needed help, maybe someone would step in, invest, give you more than I could. The air between us thickened, doughy with memories and regret. My throat tightened, voice tangled with a grief I didn't have time to mourn. So you let her undermine everything. You stood there with a safety net while I fell. I trusted you. The words tasted of old cinnamon and fresh salt. For a moment, there was nothing but the hum of silence between sentences. The glory of our college heyday dissolved in cold static. I saw us back in that old kitchen, Emma, scraping icing off her elbow, laughing until we couldn't breathe. Later, the warmth of those nights would give way to bitterness soured by ambition and fear. Emma sniffled, fighting for control. Maya, please, I want to make this right. Then meet me tomorrow at the bakery. No more secrets, no more cover-up. You and Nina face to face. We clear the air, or I close the door forever. My tone was steely, softer only for my own exhaustion. She agreed, barely more than a broken promise into the line, and hung up. That night crawled by in fractured pieces. I lay awake, sheets tangled, every shadow a replay of old betrayals. I stared at the ceiling, insomnia sharpening my doubts. What if Emma brings another excuse? What if Nina turns everything into mudslinging? What if I don't have the strength to finish what I started? The bakery felt cavernous in the dark. I got up, padded barefoot across the flour-dusted floor, the air cool and heavy with ghosts. My hands wandered over the countertop, over crumbs and receipts. Spatulas lined up like soldiers. The half-drafted contract offer on my desk glinted under the lamp. Numbers and clauses, half-finished, Nina's last play to buy me out, to sweep me away without a fight. In the stillness, I found resolve burning past the fear. I need the whole truth, I whispered, more mantra than plea. If I could cut through the layers and lies, maybe something sweet could survive on the other side. I stood with the contract in one hand, the old pastry cookbook in the other, reminders of what I'd built and what they tried to erase. Now, waiting for morning, I knew the reckoning ahead would define more than a business. It might show me who Emma was, at last, and who I could dare to be. As the clock counted midnight's last minute, bakery shadows lengthened, and every crumb in the file folder waited to be turned over. There's a special ache in waiting for an enemy who used to be your friend. Sunlight traced a gold ribbon over the bakery counter as I waited, hands trembling beneath the cool marble. This was my sanctuary, the room where dreams once took shape, in butter and hope. Now it felt like a courtroom awaiting sentence. Emma's silhouette hovered at the door, her hand fluttering by the glass. Unsure if she was brave enough to enter the world she helped splinter. When she finally stepped inside, she was smaller, softer. Nothing like the girl who used to spark laughter across midnight kitchens. Still, I braced myself as if facing a storm. I laid out the invoices, email printouts, screenshots, paper shields, for a battle I never wanted. Emma's gaze jumped from one damning document to the next. Her breath hitched as she saw the planner's payment to Nina, highlighted, indisputable. Our war was no longer just words. We stood in silence, the hum of old fridges and ticking clocks stretching every second thin. For a moment, the only sound was my heartbeat, too loud. I remembered piping chocolate letters on Emma's birthday cake, tipsy and young, swearing friendship would outlast every burnt batch and bad boyfriend. Now, the space between us was thick as congealing syrup. Emma's voice blurred, brittle, but honest. I was torn. Tradition said, keep things perfect, but fear made me listen to Nina. She pinched a sugar flower off the sample cake, crumbling it between anxious fingers. My anger flared, quick and hot, but it guttered in the face of her hurt. Then help me set things right, I said, voice breaking more with tiredness than rage. We built this together. Don't let it end with her lies. For a heartbeat, Emma just stared. Shame, relief, and memory crackled in the air. I could almost taste the old hope, the sweetness of starting fresh even as grief and anger threatened to swallow me. Crumb by crumb, I swallowed, voice low and steady. We start by undoing her damage. Today, my whispered vow curled into the sunlight, mingling with the scent of almonds and new beginnings. As Emma nodded, the air began to thaw. Trust hung by a thread, but that thread was woven from every early morning batch and hope for tomorrow we'd ever shared. For the first time since the wedding, there was a path forward, narrow, but real. Then my phone pinged sharp as a knife against a cutting board. I glanced down, health inspection tomorrow morning. All warmth drained from the room. The next battle was already landing, faster than I could catch my breath. A surprise health inspection is the kind of twist you dread more than any review. Dawn hadn't even cracked the sky, and already flour dust swirled in choking clouds as I scrubbed at the counter. Sleeves rolled, knuckles raw, heart pounding louder than the rattling mixer. The bakery was more battlefield than sanctuary, spatulas marching, pastry bags standing at attention, every stain and crumb a threat hanging in the air. The inspector's shadow filled the doorway, broad shoulders, clipboard cradled like a gavel, gaze sharp enough to slice through marzipan. He didn't bother with greetings. His eyes swept the kitchen, the stack of bowls in the sink, sticky, rings on the stainless table, the heavy scent of yeast and fear. Each imperfection seemed to glow under his scrutiny. Before I could steady my breath, Emma appeared breathless, jacket barely zipped. She didn't speak, but the tension crackled between us. Side by side we worked, wordless, swiping at counters, stacking pans, clearing crumbs, with a speed that bordered on desperation. Our history lay unspoken in every nervous glance. The inspector's raised eyebrow caught the flour smeared across my cheek. The panic thick in my voice as I tried to explain a faded temperature tag. He jotted notes with deliberate slowness, relishing the discomfort the way some people relish a bitter espresso. It struck me how easily vigilance becomes suspicion. How quickly care can curdle into accusation. His clipboard hovered over the sink, where dishes perched in fragile towers. I could see the story he was writing: violation, uncertainty, collapse. My shoulders hunched as he pointed out each floss sanitizer, low, pastry bags unsorted, one half-open freezer. I fought to keep my voice level. I'll make this right, I said softly, more plea than promise. But my nerves were splintering with every failure he recorded. The Bafri, the same place where triumph once rose with every loaf, now felt like a crime scene. A second away from yellow tape. Emma squeezed my arm, her touch brisk but real. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of who we used to be, partners in chaos, outlasting burnt crusts and broken hearts. Now, Panic laced our silence. The inspector's slow circuit was a storm cloud, refusing to leave. Sanitation, refrigeration, procedure, each word another stone on my already sinking chest. I turned my back for one breath, letting my head hang. Silence rushed in, thick as batter. I whispered, more to myself than Emma, no corner left unclean. I swear it. Then a jarring escalation. The inspector's voice dropped, casual as knife steel. Listen, I shouldn't even be giving you a chance. But perhaps we can work something out. You don't want to be shut down, do you? His words chilled the room faster than any walk-in. Freezer. Emma straightened, eyes wide. My mouth went dry. It was my whole story now, balanced on the price of a bribe. The world shrank to the click of his pen, the shame crawling up my neck, flour caked under my fingernails. I felt the urge to crumble, but something in me recoiled. Some lines you don't cross. I met his gaze, the baking sheet trembling in my grasp. What do you want? My voice was steady, but inside, every truth, every scrap of dignity, quaked. The sun had not risen yet, but war had. The counter of the heart of my dream held streaks of sweat and grit. Sometimes, the cost of survival is your own reflection staring back, daring you not to blink. Stacks of cash tremble in my flour-caked hands, bribe or bust. The storeroom's ugly light made everything look suspect, from the sticky bills fanned across the flour-splattered scale to the sweat on my neck. My heart battered my ribs. The walls seemed to close in. My father's voice echoing from old years. Integrity isn't just in the recipe, it's in who you share it with. The money felt hot, dirty. Emma burst in, eyes wild, her breath fogging the steel shelves. Don't do it, Maya. We can't compromise our integrity. Not after all we survived. She stared at the cash as if it would bite, and maybe it had. I caught my reflection in the silver fridger woman with flour in her hair and fear in her eyes. Caught between desperation and principle, I stared at the bills and heard Dad, again how he shut down his own corner shop for a month rather than grease a single palm. He always said, you'll wake up with yourself for the rest of your life. Make sure she's someone you can face. Emma's hand squeezed my wrist. Let's ask for help instead. Crowdfund repairs. Call in every favor. We built this bakery with heart, not shortcuts. Her faith was a jolt bitter and bracing as burnt espresso. I nodded, resolve pushing the panic aside. I let the money fall, slow, deliberate, back into the battered cash box. No back doors, no secrets. We fight this the way we built everything else. Public, honest, loud. My voice didn't shake. This time. Emma grinned, a flicker of the ally I'd once leaned on. Let's call the lawyer. 10 minutes later, we huddled in the bakery's front room, phone pressed between us, explaining every violation, every threat. The lawyer's calm steadied me. Document everything. Don't pay a cent. If he pushes, you have leverage. For the first time in days, I felt the world begin to tilt again, this time toward justice. I looked around at my bakery, every chipped mug, every battered rolling pin, every sun-faded award on the wall. This ends tonight, I whispered. Case file already open on the counter. Vows folded into flour. My hands, still sticky with dough, felt steadier. Just as the tension eased. Emma's phone buzzed, slicing the calm the way a sharp knife cuts a perfect tart. She checked the screen, jaw tightening. It's Nina. She wants to meet. In that suspended second, the bakery's soft hum returned. The cash box lid thunking shut. No secret money. Just honest battle scars, and a story we refused to sell. Some threats come dressed as friends. Nina's smirk chilled more than any legal warning, sweet as bitter coffee, sharp as a blade. We met at a neutral cafe, crowded yet lonely, where the hiss of steamed milk and the scent of burnt espresso felt almost cruel in their normalcy. Outside, morning sunlight bounced off dirty windows, painting gold over city grit. She ordered a latte, stirring with deliberate boredom, long nails tapping against porcelain. Heard your suing. The words barely touched her lips, just air, but heavy as cake batter. Before a bake. My stomach twisted. I watched the foam swirl while my mind flashed back to the bakery's grand opening. 3 friends laughing, aprons spotless, toasted marshmallows glowing between us. That dream felt impossibly far away, blurred behind the threat Nina now brandished. She leaned in, hawk-like and hungry, flipping a sealed envelope onto the cracked formica table. You want to fight me? Here's my counter. She slid the envelope closer, the edge snagging on a coffee ring. Non-compete clause, she whispered. You sign, You walk away, permanently, or I release everything I have, every mistake, every fluorite, into the world's open mouth. I balked, jaw tightening, refusing to touch the envelope. My pulse flickered behind my eyes. 1,000 unsaid words hardened in my chest. Every night cleaning ovens side by side. Every argument about butter ratios. Every secret pep talk in storerooms smelling of cheap vanilla. Nina's contempt tasted metallic like coins in your mouth, like endings sold at discount. I glanced past her to the window, willing myself to see that first celebration. Emma in confetti, Nina pouring champagne, my parents clapping in surprise. How had that glossy hope soured to this threat? Her voice cut through my reverie. You really want a public war? You know what comes with that, right? She smiled, teeth sharp. You're outnumbered. Bitterness curled in me, but I breathed deep, feeling heat burn up from my fist hands, that once baked, now set. I refused to sign away my life. This bakery is mine, my scars, my recipes, my late nights, my family's hope. You want to erase me, you'll have to try harder. Nina cocked an eyebrow, no longer hiding her anger. Then I'll make sure you never bake again. Her promise was a weapon, cold and certain, a batter that never rose. For one moment, the cafe noise dropped away. I felt my breath in my chest steady, immovable. My fingers brushed the envelope, but I let it rest. I will not be silenced. I whispered, not for Nina, not for Emma, not for any bribe or threat. We sat there in a heavy, glancing trucer, resolve brittle, mind built from steel, sifted through betrayal. The world beyond the glass felt changed, dangerous, but I did not flinch. All threads sabotage, bribe, lawsuit converge, in moments stitched tighter than meringue. In the marble vestibule of the courthouse, I could taste the electric tension, anxiety as bitter as burnt sugar, hope sharp as the coffee cooling in my palm. The inspector waited there, perched like a crow at the edge of my trial. His voice was low, urgent, calculated. Immunity. I'll testify about Nina's sabotage, about the bribe she set up, but you guarantee my protection. I'm not taking the fall alone. The papers in his hand trembled, not with guilt, but with the fear of being the last guilty party with a name on the door. My heart plunged, cold as forgotten dough. Everything snapped into focus: his desperation, Nina's smug threats, the wary eyes fixed on my next move. I remembered, unbidden, my father's lesson layered into every lull in my childhood kitchen. Integrity is the only ingredient you can't fake. Lose that, you lose yourself forever. I looked at the inspector, his collar damp, his hands stained with ink and panic. I made my choice. You'll get immunity, full testimony, all of it. But no more backdoors, no more secrets. Each word hung in the high-ceilinged air, weighty as a judge's gavel. His shoulders sagged, the relief real but wary. The page with my lawyer's hurried signature fluttered between us, contracts folded and sealed. My whispered vow rode on the pulse, thumping in my neck. This is our last chance. We bake the truth, new substitutes. Outside the courtroom doors, I paused. The city's heat pressed in, and every sidewalk step echoed the bakery's distant clatter, hope and perseverance against the steel and tiles of power. Emma stood neatly dressed, eyes darting, lips a pale storm. I thought about the years I'd stood with her when our futures rose and fell together in flower and wild invention. We entered the courtroom side by side, small shadows sliding beneath giant windows. The world narrowed to a rectangle of sunlight, our stakes laid bare. The prosecutor's voice cut clean through the hush. Ms. Wilson, he faced Emma, holding a file thick with signatures and secrets. Is it true you hold a financial interest in the partnership with Miss Richards, that your profit rides on her loss? Emma's face drained to porcelain. The gallery's breath held. I stood frozen, battered but unbroken, hands gripping the bench's edge. She opened her mouth, and the courtroom seemed to crack and tilt around her. I never wanted this, she whispered, but the damage was done. Her admission, an unexpected twist that rewrote the rules of every rivalry and hope I'd known. Judge's gavel gleamed in the high windows, sunlight warping across its handle like a warning. My world balanced on the slivered edge between what we choose and what we're forced to claim. A judge's gavel echoes like a heartbeat. Will I taste victory, or only the ashes of what's left? The courtroom felt colder than the walk-in freezer. At the bakery, I watched sunlight shudder on the judge's bench and fought to steady my trembling hands, palms pressed flat to the smooth wood. crumbs of dread caught under my nails. All the mess, all the years, it came down to this final ingredient: truth under oath. The judge called the inspector to the stand. Tension rippled through every aisle as he adjusted his collar, eyes flitting from my lawyer to Nina to me. His testimony was calm, rehearsed, but every word cut. The bribe attempt, the planted review, the email threads looping Nina and the planner together. My stomach swirled with nausea, and hope surely no one could spin this web any tighter. The emails exposing Emma, the messages, the budget lines, Emma's secret stake, her profit, promised if I fell. Every betrayal lined up, all the dirty dishes exposed at once. For a moment, relief and shame warred in my chest. My tongue felt thick, useless. I looked at Emma as the prosecutor read out her reply. Just make sure Maya never finds out. She gasped, raw, remorseful, childlike in her shock. She crumpled, hands over her face. The betrayal was complete, but so was the truth. The judge's ruled words echoed. Judgment for Ms. Patel. Injunction issued. Damages to be assessed. It rang out, a benediction and a reckoning. Hot tears slipped down my cheeks, salt stirred into the cake. Injustice undone, but not forgotten. For a long, layered second, I sat motionless. The world in hush around me, steam from my skin rising into the ceiling lights. The battle was won, but I tasted only exhaustion, a victory scraped with sadness. I thought of Dad's voice, his quiet warning. Triumph, earned in pain, is the slowest to sweeten. Emma sobbed, breaking through the hush with a mix of relief and regret. For a heartbeat, I wanted to reach for her. Instead, I let my whisper fill my chest, a quiet vow. This is only the beginning. I would not let victory turn bitter, not now, not ever again. Outside, the courthouse steps blazed under a sun I hadn't noticed in weeks. Cameras flashed. A reporter caught up, saying, "Emma, do you regret calling her cake tacky?" The words, once an insult, now rebounded back. Stripped of their poison, I let the moment linger, a slow exhale, a smile through tears. I glanced down at my hands, clean at last, clutching the copy of the judgment. The purse at my side, battered but loyal, weighed different now, a vessel for proof, for grit, for starting again. "Let's turn the page," I whispered, stepping out into the sun. Headlines devour you or deliver you. This time, redemption was spun from scandal, and I had to bake my own narrative or let the world eat my story raw. My phone glowed with pings, cheers, and emojis from strangers, former customers, even childhood friends. Finally, justice for real bakers. You stood up for yourself and for all of us. I let myself smile, but a part of me stayed wary. The internet had a short memory, and I'd learned the oven of public opinion burned hotter than anything in my kitchen. The bakery's warm air was thick with vanilla and lemon zest. Sunlight glossed the marble counter where I perched, phone in one hand, spatula in the other. Each message nudged away some of the weight I'd carried for months. For once, I scrolled instead of flinched. Emma arrived just after noon, rolling up her sleeves before she even said hello. She moved past the morning news clippings, the viral hashtags, the open laptop with my name newly vindicated. Wordlessly, she took the basin of icing bowls to the sink and started to scrub. The silence that stretched between us felt layered, bitter and sweet, cautious and familiar. The hush after a storm when you don't quite trust the sunlight is real. I studied her hands, pink from the soap, then the line of her jaw, tight, but not closed. Something in me fluttered, hope, forgiveness, or just the memory of trust, frayed but not broken. The scent of powdered sugar and almond carried me back to those late-night decorating sessions, when we invented recipes in the dark and believed every risk would end in applause. Emma set down the rinsed bowl and met my eyes. Her voice was hushed, tentative, yet true. "I know nothing I say can erase it, but I'd rather build something than run from what we broke. If you'll have me, Maya, let's try again, as partners, on your terms." For a moment, I just let the quiet sit. The bakery clock ticked, measuring a pause full of every scar and every stolen dream between us. I looked at the old pastry bag, symbolic, its seams mended with flowery tape, then at Emma, dusted with possibility. "I'm scared," I admitted, voice soft, but so tired of baking alone. "Let's make something new, not perfect, but honest." Our laughter surfaced, hesitant then free, as she tossed me a dish towel. The years had battered us, but right there, side by side, rebuilding, I felt the kitchen filling with warmth I hadn't trusted since before the scandals, before betrayal. We wiped counters, emptied trays of their ruins and hopes, and let the day air out old wounds. My whispered vow was almost lost in the hum of mixers and the shine of afternoon. Let's bake something new together. Just then, my phone pinged louder, insistent. The subject line caught my breath. Magazine cover feature. For the first time, the spotlight felt like an invitation, not a threat. 1 year later, the bakery's glow feels like a first blush of hope, soft, almost private, as if happiness needs time to rise. I unlocked the door to our expanded studio, Emma at my side. It's early. Sunlight streaks across fresh tiles and the hum of ovens waiting to be woken. For a moment, I linger in the threshold, letting gratitude wash over me in small, golden waves. Everything looks both new and lived in. The scars of last year hidden beneath fresh paint and pride. Emma nudges me toward the wall behind the counter, where a single framed photo has always hung, a snapshot of that tacky wedding cake. 3 tiers, lopsided and perfect, survivor of scandal and whispers. I pause, letting my eyes draw out the journey. What once brought shame is now a badge of arrival. The past, finally sweetened. I remember a night, months ago, when quitting felt closer than rest. The silence was tight as fondant stretched thin. I sat at my workstation, dough-stained, nearly undone, until Emma brought in a box of misshapen cookies and simply said, "Taste." We ate failures together, and I realized home isn't what gets served, but who stays to try again when things fall apart today. The memory catches in my throat as Emma steps forward and places a single sugared rose beside the photo. Her palm lingers, as if anchoring the flower to all it means: forgiveness, rebuilding, ceremony over pain. Beneath the gaze of the cake that changed everything, we piped frosting onto the community fundraiser. Kaika, new recipe, a new cause, a fresh chance. The air is thick with sugar and cinnamon, hope and laughter echoing through the bustle of rising staff, shouting children, a doorbell that never stops. I pause, letting the scent of vanilla and reconciliation fill my lungs. For a breath, all is silent and perfect. My whispered vow, we're home. It's true in a way surviving never was before. As we set the finished cake on display, the camera of memory pulls back, the bakery alive, windows bright, patrons crowding with expectation. Some reading the framed story on the wall, promise and purpose knit together, the taste of possibility in the air.